Okay, I'm ready. 1.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
This is Burn This Book, a banned books book club where we, Nicolle and Eden, read a banned or challenged book twice a month and discuss its meaning, impact, and censorship to make it more accessible for all readers. This week's book is A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle.
I always said Lingle.
L'Engle.
Hi.
Shoot. Which was published in 1962 for young adults. This book has been challenged for 2 decades since the American Library Association began tracking bans and challenges in the 90s. So yeah, this is my second time reading it. Have you read it before, Nicolle?
Yeah, I'd read it when I was in middle school. My mom was always like, it's such a great book. But I don't think I really understood it in middle school at all. I think I got kind of lost.
Yeah.
But reading it the second time was like a really powerful experience. Like I was really moved.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's like top 10 favorite books now.
Oh, wow.
That's not true. Not top 10, but probably top 50, which is still big deal.
Big deal. It's definitely a book I would recommend to my daughter when she's older. I feel like it's a very STEM-oriented book.
Yeah,
very much like science, math. Like the main character is a math whiz, but she kind of gets quote-unquote lazy about it because she doesn't do it the way her school dictates it. To quickly summarize this book, it's about Meg and her younger brother, Charles Wallace. They're 2 pretty special kids, and their dad has been missing for... I actually couldn't tell the timeline. Was it like years? Like,
it was years.
Like he had never met Charles Wallace before.
Right.
Who's like 5 years old at this point and is a prodigy and genius.
Yeah.
But then they go on a fantastical adventure with some of these beings named Mrs. Whatsit, Mrs. Oh, shoot.
I will tell you. 1 second. It's Mrs. Whatsit. Oh, gosh. Mrs. Who's it? Okay, Mrs. Whatsit. I'll tell you. Mrs. Whatsit, Mrs. Which, Mrs. Who.
Okay, yep.
There we go. Yeah. And, like, what's really incredible is that it's very much like a young adult novel. It feels very, like you just have this normal world and you don't know why Meg's dad is gone. And then you find out that her younger brother has been hanging out with this older lady and these other older ladies. And they are obviously very magical, kooky people, and they kind of act as like this portal into this very like interesting world that isn't actually magical. It's all science based. And that's also, as a kid, I was like, what is happening? But yeah, and Mrs. Whatsit, Mrs. Who, and Mrs. Which kind of act like, who are those 3 fairies in... They're kooky, and they like kind of are like, come on, Betty. The 3 fairies, Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather... In Sleeping Beauty. Yeah, they kind of are like that kind of energy. Where I don't quite know where they come from, how they met Charles Wallace. Yeah. But I know that they're there.
Yeah, I've never seen Sleeping Beauty, actually.
Wild. That's like one of the only Disney movies, well, classic Disney movies where the female and the male romantic interests actually get to know each other before getting married or committing themselves.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, they actually have a relationship.
Oh, wow.
I know. Isn't that crazy? And neither of them know that either of them is a prince or princess. Like, they're like, it's kind of a fun surprise at the end for them.
Oh, I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I think it's great. I think it's great. Anyway, sorry, back to this. So, back to the summary you were saying. I totally took you on another path.
Oh, no way. No worries. No way. It's late when we're recording this, so we're both a little...
We're both so tired with this world.
So tired.
Which, quite frankly, Meg is as well in the book. Yeah,
that's true.
Meg, she's like 13?
I think so.
Yeah, she's tired. The world is hard. She's a math whiz, like you said. She's not doing well in school. Her dad has been gone for a long time. She has this prodigy little brother who everyone thinks is weird. And she's a hot mom. That's something we learned. Hot science mom.
That's true. And everyone at school is like really inappropriately approaching her about her father. And like talking about how he's a deadbeat and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, there's a reason why he's not around. He just like abandoned them kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, Mr. Principal.
Yeah, very strange. Like a lot of adults, not even just like other children. Yeah, that was weird.
It was really strange.
Yeah. But she goes on this adventure with this neighbor boy named Calvin, who's also very intelligent, and her younger brother, Charles Wallace. Also, something to note, she has 2 other brothers that are in between her and Charles Wallace. They're not really part of this adventure situation.
Yeah.
They go on this adventure with the guidance of Mrs. Which, and Mrs. Whatsit to save her father, who is stuck in this other dimension. And they use this, like, this thing called like the Tesseract, which is the scientific principle or thing, something in the physics realm that Mr. Murray, Meg's dad, had been studying. And it kind of allows you to jump into like, other dimensions or other universes.
Yeah.
And you're wrinkling time. So if time was a long line, you're able to jump over the other piece, and also assuming time is like 3-dimensional or something. Mm-hmm. This is where Nicolle, especially like middle school Nicolle reading, was very confused and was like, I'm just going to take it at face value. Move on, get to the emotional stuff, and walk away. And this time it was much easier, but I'm still like, I don't even have the language to explain it, but it makes sense as you're reading it, and it feels good. Yeah. But they have to save their dad. That's the whole thing.
They have to save their dad. With that Wrinkle in Time piece, I don't know if the first time I read it, I would have picked up on it, but I had watched something where they were talking about wrinkling time. And they're like, like if you fold a piece of paper and like point one end of the paper reaches the other point of the paper, and then you can quickly walk off and like onto the other side of the paper. Anyway, that was really helpful.
They also explain that in the book too.
They do.
Just like,
the second time reading it, I was like, oh, like that was it. That was the explanation.
Yeah. So there's a lot of like dimension, universe jumping kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And ultimately we find like Meg has to like go through like a journey of self-actualizing and realizing that she is intelligent, she is worthwhile, she has courage, and she like can do hard things. And like there's this like evil thing that they don't have, it doesn't have a name, they like just call it, I think. And it's like just evil power and darkness and fear and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And so it's very much like that, where there's no choice with those people who have been like seduced by it.
Yeah.
And through love, Meg ends up being able to like withstand the seduction of it, and like isn't ever seduced, and is able to like find her dad, bring him back, and then other issues arise. And we won't spoil it. I mean, I guess we can.
We've spoiled every single
thing. But Wrinkle in Time, I know there's a movie, there's a whole thing, but we don't want to tell you. There's just a lot of rescuing.
That movie did not do very well. But yeah, they go on a rescue.
I don't know about that movie. I want to watch it really badly now, though. But I know Ava DuVernay, and they also... It was cool because they had, like, Meg is black in that movie, and so is Mrs. Murray. Chris Pine is her dad in that movie. So... And
Oprah is one of the who's...
Yeah.
Which...
Yeah.
And Reese Witherspoon. Mindy Kaling.
Yeah. But it's cool because in the book, like, never is anyone's race noted. Mm-hmm. So that was, like, a really cool thing to realize, like, oh my gosh, as a white person, I obviously always had imagined Meg as a white girl. Mm-hmm. So I'm grateful that movies help me to reimagine, and, it's just nice.
Yeah,
it's just nice. It's a nice gift.
It really is. What surprised me the most this time reading it around was how very Christian it is, and like to the point where I actually felt like I was reading a science version of the Chronicles of Narnia. Mm-hmm. Like there are these mythical creatures in another dimension who are quoting the Bible.
Yeah,
like the Aunt Beast, like these kind of entities of light and love they quoted like all things good happen to those who love God. And so like, in this interdimensional universe, a God exists. And yeah, it just felt very C.S. Lewis-y, I guess.
Yeah. I was really surprised by that too. And it was interesting seeing the blend of science and Christian thought. Because I was like, I don't really, like, I don't remember them ever talking about Jesus. But they talk about, but like, because I was like, maybe they're just like religious, you know, or like there's a spiritual element. But you're right, they're quoting the literal Bible. So it has to be Christian because it's the New Testament that they're quoting.
Yeah.
Right? Is it? Yeah. I think so.
I think so. I don't know. We don't know our scriptures very well.
No. But that was really surprising.
Yeah. And it's so I think I picked up on the Christian themes, but Madeleine L'Engle also talks about like other religious figures, philosophers, scientists, and artists as part of the group that is fighting against the darkness. And I really love that too, because it is that merging of science and religion that many people separate. But she melds them into one thing as a force. Together, they're a force against darkness. Like they provide knowledge, they provide the equality without likeness, or was it likeness? Yeah. So it was talking about how like it controlled people to be the same, and sameness was what was causing the darkness in the universe. But like Madeleine talked about how these religion and science breaks through that sameness and provides a lot of like complexity of thought and variations in types of beliefs and scientific methods that brings light to this world, which I thought was really beautiful.
Well, and I think when you blend both science and religion together, it requires like a ton of nuance. And it does require a lot of creativity. There is like something that really, so there were like a lot of different points in this book that I was like, oh. There was a moment at the end where you feel like when Meg is like, I can do it. And she starts off in the book like completely idolizing her father, and like, if anyone says anything bad about her dad, she's super mad. Then once she's rescued her father and her younger brother, Charles Wallace, has kind of been like taken by it, she gets really mad at her dad because she doesn't feel like he's doing anything. And she like is like, and I think appropriately frustrated that she feels like she's been abandoned, that she's had to do the raising and that she's having to do the rescuing. And and that like, just because she got him didn't make her life easier. Like it didn't fix everything. Having her dad back in her life, like there were still problems, and she still had to be courageous and and I hate this phrase, but she had to be like a big girl. Like she couldn't just like crawl up into his arms. She had to like own her life and move forward. And I like that was such an important theme. And because I do think that a lot of the time, especially when we've experienced something that is traumatic to our nervous systems, we do think that like, oh, once it's fixed, we'll just be fine. But we still like, it's not going to fix it always. And then the other point that I loved was how, going off on what you were talking about, like how all of these like different groups, like there was a spiritual component. Have you read the book Inherit the Wind, or seen the movie or the play?
It's been a long, long time. I actually think it's a banned book, but
I'm sure it is, because the premise of it is just like,
it's about the lawyer who is defending.
Defending the teacher who taught evolution, and this whole town fired the teacher, and the teacher sued the town, and so he's defending the teacher and being like, he's allowed to teach evolution, and they're like, no, he's only allowed to teach creationism. And at the end, he walks up, and in the movie it's Spencer Tracy, so that's fun, but he walks up and he's holding the Bible and Darwin, and he's putting them together. He's like, why can't they work together? Like, why can't we just have more nuance in this conversation? And I think that that's also something that Meg had to learn about herself, that she's not all bad, she's not all good, she's not all these things, that she is just who she is, and that's okay, and she gets to make those choices of who she wants to be and how she wants to act. And you also see that point, like, she ends up on this, like, planet with Ant Beast.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember? Yeah.
The scripture quoting creature?
The scripture quoting creature with no eyeballs.
Yep.
And no mouth.
Yep.
Or no eyeballs. No, they had a mouth. I don't know. They talked out of, like, they had a lot of, like, tentacles or something.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot going on, but she really preferred the name Ant Beast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know. I really enjoyed that. But anyways, Ant Beast just loved, and all those, like, creatures on this magnificent planet just loved Meg. And, at one point, Meg says that she was able to finally rest because she knew that no matter what, she was going to be loved.
Yeah.
That no matter what her response was to something, that Ant Beast was going to love her.
Yeah.
And it was that idea that, like, through unconditional love, Meg was able to actually breathe and become the person that she needed to be in order to save her younger brother. And she was able to be mad at her dad, and Aunt Beast still loved her.
Yeah.
She was able to be mad at the situation, and Aunt Beast still loved her. And she was able to, like, be afraid and not want to show up, and Aunt Beast still loved her. And in that moment, I was like, ugh. And that's such, like, a nuanced perspective, because Aunt Beast was clearly all science, like, very scientific, understood everything, but also was quoting scripture in a way that didn't feel cheesy to me, or didn't feel like it was just all about, yeah, like, there's good and there's evil, and we get to choose how we navigate that.
Definitely, 100%. And I wrote this part down in my notes. I wrote, I love that this book encourages Meg, and therefore other girls, to get angry and to use that anger in their fight against evil. I think, like, this is so many messages in society from the beginning of the world on, is that like, when a woman gets mad, then, like, they're unreasonable, hysterical, etc. But this one really encourages and cultivates that, and to what you were saying, doesn't make you any less worthy of love. You're using that anger, rightfully so, in this fight against evil, whatever that evil is. Yes. Yeah, since the dawn of time, women have been looked down upon if they've ever gotten angry about anything. And we've been written off because, oh, they're just hysterical. Even the word hysterical has a lot of historical meaning behind that. And where hysterectomy and, like, the root of hysterectomy and hysterical are the same. Anyway, yeah, I just love that it encourages Meg to get angry and to use that anger. And she's not any less worthy of love from a magnificent creature, like, if she gets angry in this, as long as it's, like, I don't even want to caveat it with as long as, but in her fight against what she believes is evil. And yeah.
Well, I also think, like, I think that there is, I think that there's a space, like, you just see so much, like, movement of emotions throughout this book, because she's so desperate, she's so hungry for validation and for affirmation. She doesn't feel pretty. She's aware that her mom's so pretty. She doesn't feel smart. She's aware Charles Wallace is smart. She doesn't feel all of these things. And through this journey, though, she has to realize that, like, those comparisons don't matter. And she goes from being, like, lonely, sad, all of those things, like, incredibly loving and idealizing of her dad and her mom, to bringing them down to earth, having that, like, come to Jesus moment, and not literally, but, like, you know, about, like, how her family's imperfect. Her younger brother, who she also kind of idolizes and puts on a pedestal, he's the most susceptible to the evil because of his pride, because he's so smart. Like,
a 5-year-old.
She has to realize all this stuff about all of these people, and, like, grapple with all these really hard kind of adult realizations. And in the end, like, the only antidote and the only salve for all of it is just love. And she learns that it's patterned by Aunt Beast. It doesn't just come out of nowhere for her. And I thought that was a really good lesson, is that, like, it was patterned by Aunt Beast, and then she's able to deliver that to other people. And something that I've also been thinking about is, like, in my quest to be more of a feminist and giving, you know, and giving men space to feel all of the emotion and to be human beings, giving women space to do that too, and all of that. It's like, it's really hard for women and stories about women who are going to conquer big things like Meg to, like, we often don't have representations of people who do love with purity and, you know, without caveats. And so having that representation with Van Beast and then seeing that learned behavior again with Meg at the end is like, it's pretty good writing. It's pretty good storytelling. My gosh, because like we never get to see that modeling. Yeah, they're just usually like, well, the girl, it's just going to happen because the girl's good at it because she's a girl. Yeah. Which is very patriarchal belief system. Like, girls and boys have just as much capacity to love. But we assume girls are just more natural at it, which is not true. Yeah. But, like, I thought that was so great. And, like, you also see Calvin, her next-door neighbor, who's, like, kind of a hot boy. They become, like, romantic interests. And, like, so not only is she in a space where she can receive love from her dad and from her family, but she can also receive and give love to Calvin too in a way that's like very pure and very sweet. And that was like a nice thing also to see. Like, there wasn't the high school dynamic or whatever junior high dynamic that they were in. There were just a lot of pieces about love that I was like, this is a really great modeling, and it doesn't feel too mature and it doesn't feel too immature. It just feels like really great modeling for a kid.
It really does.
Yeah.
And I think there's some purpose to Madeleine making it a giant brain. Because it like, to go off of what you're saying, like, it almost feels like she's saying, oh, like, to have a brain without love is to introduce darkness into the world. Like, that love brings, like, allows for that nuance. And it allows for anger. It allows for all these emotions that we name, that we label negative, quote unquote. But like, if it was just a brain running things, then we'd all be going outside we'd all be the same, and we'd all go out at the same time and bounce the basketball the same way. And just lack of choice or anything, and not allowing for that nuance in each other.
Yeah, because love does perpetuate freedom of, like, those who you love. Like, you want other people to be able to do what they want to do. Yeah. And also, like, and love also, like, I'd be curious what people would say, because we're no scholars on the topic, but I do feel like love also enables creativity, because creativity, I think you have to have a level of compassion in order to be creative, in my opinion. Like, you have to be able to imagine other things. And step into other spaces in order to create. Yeah.
Definitely.
That's such an interesting idea. It was also very Lord of the Rings, too, because you know how there's, like, Sauron, and then the mouth of Sauron comes out in The Return of the King. And so you had that with the guy with the red eyes. There was a guy with the red eyes that came out and was, like, the mouthpiece of it in the book. Oh, yeah, Do you remember him? He was freaky. And, like, there were just a lot of different, like, people who were, like, channeling it or the darkness to Meg, to communicate to Meg that the battle or whatever was on. And I thought it was pretty fun. And something that was interesting too was that Madeleine L'Engle, when she said that when she was writing the book, that a lot of people were like, no one's going to understand it. Kids aren't going to like it. Like, this isn't a good book for kids. But she'd written it with her kids. Like, she would tell them the stories as she was writing it, and they would, like, give her pointers and ideas, and they were, like, involved. So she was like, obviously it's a good idea. Like, my kids like it, so other kids will like it. Yeah. And I do think that's true. Like, I didn't have to understand all the science when I was a kid to, like, have enjoyed the book. It was a good ride. Yeah. And as an adult, like, I love it even more now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to read it. I want to read it, like, every 10 years, just as, like, a good, like, checking point of, like, am I prioritizing love in my interactions with people? Like, yeah. How am I working on that?
I love that. Yeah, in the introduction of the copy that I had, someone wrote fan mail, and they wrote to Madeleine, "This is not a kid's book. This book has no limits." Like, that's so beautiful. Oh. What a beautiful piece of fan mail.
No.
But it's interesting because Madeleine actually targeted the age 8 to 12, but then everyone else is like, oh, like, this is, like, above that level.
Yeah, I'm surprised. 8-year-olds.
Yeah. And Madeleine also said it's because she got that criticism that it's much too hard for kids, but she her response was, "It's not too difficult for kids, it's too difficult for grown-ups. Too many grown-ups put themselves in little rooms with windows that don't open and doors that are locked, and they want to close themselves off from any new ideas." I'm like, ooh, burn.
Ooh, yeah, good one, Maddie. Yeah, no, that's good. What was, like, on that same note, too, like, I don't feel like she dumbs down.
No, there's no dumbing down at all.
Phone call. No, she doesn't dumb it down at all for kids. And also, I think she looks at, like, the way she even wrote Charles Wallace and the way that she wrote Meg and Calvin was like, these are just really smart kids. And I think that she plays into that role of like, no, my readers are smart kids. Like, they're smart people, even though they're little kids. And something interesting, too, in an analysis I was listening to, was that Mrs. Murray, Meg's mom, when she's talking about Charles Wallace, she refers to Charles Wallace as he's new. That's what she says. He's new. He's like a new thing. So it's like, there's an interesting question of like, is she saying Charles Wallace is like not normal, like not human? Yeah. Or is he like, is he like this new type of person? And was he created in a, is he a scientific creation, or what's going on there? And so like, there's a lot of questions about that, but like, you can see how she is very, like, she's just she's very trusting of her readers. Yeah. And to the point where she even makes Charles Wallace like this crazy, we don't quite understand what's going on with Charles Wallace's brilliance, but he's very smart and he's a very little kid. But as a reader, when I was a kid, I didn't think that was like a crazy point. I didn't think it was a weird idea. But as an adult, I'm like, oh, he's probably a freak. He's probably like a freak show, freak wharf. He's probably a, like a science, like he's a product of something scientific or strange. And maybe he's not, but like the analysis was like, as adults, I think we assume he's got to be. That's what Mrs. Murray meant by saying he's new. But as kids, we just were like, oh no, he's just a really smart kid. Yeah. And I think that's really interesting. Why do we need to dumb down kids in our minds? Like, why don't we assume they're smart? I don't know.
I don't know either. I watched a movie on the plane ride home called Come On, Come On. Have you heard of that? Or
I've heard about it. That's the one with Joaquin.
With Joaquin.
Yeah.
But that is also another piece of media that's like Joaquin Phoenix for those of you listening. That is another piece of media that really just highlights that kids just know things. Like, kids are aware of their surroundings. Kids know when something's off. And kids are much more capable than we give them credit for.
Yeah, completely. And I think that doesn't mean that we have to give them all of like our problems and treat them like adults, but I think it means that we need to like give dignity to the fact that they are in on it a little bit more than we think that they are. I think A Wrinkle in Time was so great. Another thing that I loved was Ava DuVernay said that her father had died like right before she was asked to direct this movie. And which is like a really interesting thing. Yeah. And her father was was a really big deal for her. And when she was slated to direct and the news went out, she got a lot of letters from people being like, this book changed my life. This book saved my life. And it was people from like all different walks of life, all different ethnic groups, all different
across the world.
Neighborhoods, across the world, saying things like, this book changed my life. And to think about writing this book after you've lost a parent is very humbling and very tender. I mean, directing this movie after you've lost a parent, or reading this book, not writing this book. Either way, this book, like, in challenging loss and how we normally look at loss, and, like, I don't know, I like the idea of thinking that a loved one has just tesseracted to another space, I also love the idea of that there's all these different universes and galaxies that where, there's a lot of beasts and things that love me and love my family and want to care for them. Yeah. There's a lot of cute little pieces, cute little knickknacks.
Yeah. And loves in a way that is so, like, that we've probably might not have experienced yet before on this earth.
Yeah. And it makes it also feel like it's possible to love in such an unconditional way. And, that we just haven't reached that point yet.
Yeah.
as a society, because we're not very good at that. We're just not very good at that.
We're not very
I don't have anything else to say. I thought I had a lot of things to say, and I think that's also kind of a testament to this book, is like there just isn't anything to say. Like, you just have to read it.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful. Like, nothing I'm going to say is going to be like, yeah, awesome. Like, it's just, everything I'm saying is stupid.
Yeah.
But the book, the book is just so beautiful. It's a big book, and I did not have that. I didn't know it was until this read.
Big book in terms of, like, thematically.
Emotions. Yeah, thematically, emotions.
Because it's actually quite a short
part
book.
of a series. Yeah, it's a short book, very readable. And also it's part of a series, which I didn't know that either. I've never read that. Yeah, so I want to read the rest of them. Like, there's a whole thing, like, Meg gets married to Calvin, and, like, things, like, they have kids, and, like, you read about their kids, and, like, it just keeps going and going. Mm-hmm. Isn't that crazy? I didn't know any of that.
I did know a little bit of... I didn't realize it was, like, a series afterwards. I thought it was just, like, another story that she had written. Because there's a whole afterword in mine that I probably should not have read, because it tells me the reason why it was banned. So I'm not going to be ending fun in this guessing part.
Okay, well, all right. So let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Also, you're right, though. Okay, I'm looking at an analysis just on SparkNotes, which is a great tool, honestly, everybody. But back to the Christianity bit. Yeah, Jesus is the first figure that Mrs. Whatsit cites as a fighter against the dark thing, against it. And then Mrs. Who quotes the New Testament. And then Mrs. Whatsit uses the prophet Isaiah in describing things. And then Mrs. Who also quotes Paul. But there's like a lot, which is really interesting. Also, one more thing. Mrs. Who, Mrs. Whatsit, and Mrs. Witch, like, it's shown that, like, one of, like, they used to be stars. And that journey of no longer being a star, of, like, exploding, was, like, pretty traumatic. Like, that they're still recovering, or, like, each of them is still, like, in their life cycle of, like, their journey of, like, from being a star to what they are. And, like, they're not done developing into what they will be. One is, like, a lot younger, and one doesn't speak with, like, their original words. They are always quoting things because they just haven't found the words to communicate. Like,
right. Yeah.
But, like, there's just a lot of growth happening on all of these different characters. That's really interesting to me, and I like it. I don't know what to say about it, but I like it.
Yeah.
It makes me feel like I can keep growing. Maybe I'm a star and I'm going to explode eventually and become a Mrs. Witch or whatever. And yeah, it's very cute. It's very interesting. And there's just like, I just love it.
And maybe they're on their way to being Aunt Beasts. Like,
yeah.
They're just on this life cycle, like on this trajectory to becoming beings full of love.
Completely.
One thing I want to bring up before we dive into the band conversation, I wrote this down in my notes, and I really loved in the book, they talked about how our lives are sonnets where the form is strict, but the rules are loose in what you write within those and within the form, which I think is like really beautiful. Like going back to like the conversation about love versus a brain without love, and also sameness and likeness and whatever. Like so much creativity can come from parameters, I guess. Yeah. And like our parameters in this universe is that we are born, then we live, and then we die. Like, and what we do, it just like brings a lot of focus into the life that we are living today. It's like, what are we going to write in the sonnet that is our life?
I love that. Yeah, that's a good quote. Rich. Story.
Madeleine.
Eden. Madeleine. Or Madeleine.
Madeleine?
I don't know. Madeline?
Shoot.
Madeleine?
It's probably Madeleine. Maddie. Mads.
Madge. No,
Madge.
That's Margaret.
Okay, do you have any guesses on why it was banned?
I think because she's in trouble. She's in danger. It's scary. I don't know. She's also insubordinate to her teachers. Like, she keeps getting in trouble. That's my guess.
Okay. I'll let you know what the afterword said. It was too hard to read.
Ban it because it was too hard?
They were just like, this probably shouldn't be in this school library because it's, like, the age group is in the right age group. So that was one reason. Witchcraft and New Age spirituality. I think they saw the W's as witch.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Mrs. Witch. That is who, which, where.
Yeah, it's yeah.
That's the W's.
Some people thought it was too overtly Christian. Other people thought it was anti-Christian.
What?
Yeah.
That's funny. That's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Like, you might as well kill two birds with the same stone, and she clearly did that. That's awesome.
That is awesome.
You're too Christian and too not Christian.
Yeah. Which is so interesting because, like, the main vibe I got was Chronicles of Narnia, and which is I'm like, this is like pretty heartfelt Christian.
I didn't feel like it was necessarily Christian, but I felt like it was religious. Like, I got the feeling like, but because I also didn't put it together that it was the New Testament, and that I was just like, yeah, it's just a really like they're just pulling like relevant spiritual things to the very Western audience. But I didn't think it was, but now that I'm thinking like, oh yeah, a lot of New Testament, clearly very Christian. Mm-hmm. Clearly.
And essentially they angered the same antagonist as the future Harry Potter.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. Good times, Witchcraft.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Richcraft.
That's
crazy. I wonder which states said which thing. Like if it was like a southern state that said it was anti-Christian, and if it was like a really liberal New Englandy kind of state that was like, it's too Christian.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder if there's like if we could look at like how the politics of each of those locations.
Let me see if I can. Oh.
What?
According to USA Today, the novel was challenged in a school district in the state of Alabama due to the books listing the name of Jesus Christ together with the name of great artists, philosophers, scientists, and religious leaders when referring to those who defend Earth against evil.
Oh my gosh.
And then in Florida, parents claim that the novel promoted witchcraft. Now, here is a great example of not reading the book that you're trying to ban.
Yeah, there's no witchcraft in it.
Yeah. It's all science.
Yeah.
Like maybe fantastical science. I wouldn't even say it's fantastical science. I bet scientists have already talked about like this idea of jumping dimensions.
I mean, I hope so. If they haven't, we've got a few letters to write. Yeah, no, I'm sure. And I also think like, well, isn't that what physics is all about? Is understanding the physical plane. I'm just saying stuff. I don't know anything.
Here's the thing.
I barely passed that class.
Yeah, this is probably my physics class was a bust when I was in high school because my teacher was sick. So we had to have substitute teachers every time we had the class. But they were not consistent. And so we did not learn physics that year.
Yeah. No, that's believable. My physics experience was actually really awesome. My teacher was like a cool scientist lady, and she'd like lived in Antarctica, like studying.
Oh, that's fun.
And she was very passionate about penguins and stuff.
That's really
and that
sweet.
they were all dying.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was sad. But yeah, she was really cool. But I really fed into that stereotype that like, I'm not going to be able to learn science. I'm not good at science.
Yeah.
And so I didn't try at all, which is sad. Because if I had tried, maybe I'd understand this book better.
Mm-hmm. I know.
Maybe it is promoting witchcraft, and we just don't understand science. Maybe we
witchcraft
read it wrong.
is just science. Oh.
Yeah.
I see
Witchcraft is science, yeah.
It's like, biology.
We're actually just terrible readers.
Yeah. The author said regarding all the book bans and challenges, she said, "It seems people are willing to damn the book without reading it. Nonsense about witchcraft and fantasy. First I felt horror, then anger, and finally I said, the hell with it. It's great publicity, really."
Honestly, she went through that evolution of emotion, just like Meg did.
Yep.
All the stuff. Yeah, it is great publicity. I mean, I'm sure a lot more people in that school district, like in those districts, learned that this book existed. So,
Yeah.
bravo.
Bravo.
Bravo. Yeah.
And way to go. Maybe now my new goal is to write something that is both too Christian and anti-Christian.
I love that. I'm very curious how you'll go about it.
Me too.
So,
I'll just
just
plagiarize A Wrinkle in Time.
We love that. We love that. Just change the names.
Yeah, exactly.
Meg to Egg. Her?
Her?
Yeah, it's easy. Easy peasy.
Easy peasy.
Yeah, I love this book. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
I'm sorry I didn't have more interesting... I really thought I had interesting things to say.
I think you did have interesting things to say.
I had a lot of passionate feelings about it, but...
Those are all welcome.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Eden. Okay, let us pause this one. I think we're good.
Awesome.
I think we're good?
I think we're
good. Okay, I'm gonna stop.
Burn This Book is produced by us, Nicolle and Eden Wen.
Music written by me, Nicolle, and produced and performed by my dad, Frank.